as Jordan said, we're here to really give you an overview of the CEDI program, an overview of the offering for this intake. But as you'll soon find out from the CEDI program, we would rather not speak for the program and instead have our partnerships speak for their experience. So I also am really happy to have two of our current participating partners, Haisla Nation Council and the District of Kitimat, here to share a little bit about their experience in the program. And because they're very, very busy individuals, we have them just for a short amount of time this afternoon. So we're going to just jump right into that after I do a few introductory slides about the program. So, as I said, this is sort of how we'll spend our time here today together. And I just want to reiterate that this is being recorded, so it will be available for you to either watch again or pass along to any colleagues who maybe weren't able to join us here today. So at a really high level, the CEDI program has two main goals. The first is to support communities to establish sustainable and resilient relationships. And we really focus on supporting partnerships to build relationships at both the levels of elected officials, but also senior staff, ultimately working to integrate the relationships deep within each organization or government body, and broadening, of course, out to community. The second is to increase the capacity to be able to engage in long-term collaborative planning. So whether that be around collaborative community economic development, land use, or infrastructure, we support the partnerships to be able to do that over the long term. And as I'll talk about in a little bit, that really means, starting with learning about one another, learning how each government works, learning about cultures and history and ways of being, in order to really build more sustainable relationships. I won't go through this in detail. This is in the information sheet that is available also for this whole process. But there are many benefits of First Nation municipal collaboration. And what I will say is, I think, as I've experienced from working with many partnerships over the years that I've been on the program, is that it's a relationship of choice. And ultimately what that means is that partners are coming to the table, deciding to be in relationship, deciding to be in partnership because there is benefit at the local level for all peoples. And so I won't say too much more about that. I know that our guests, Kaylee and Walsham, will likely speak to that. And so instead of me introducing you, Kaylee and Walsham, why don't you go ahead and unmute yourselves and introduce yourselves in the best way.
Sure. Thanks, Marissa. Kaylee Gardner, Kalasan Nugwa, Gekilin Haisli. So my name's Kaylee Gardner. I'm from the Haisla Nation. I'm the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer of Development, which is our Economic Development Department, Employment and Training and Natural Resources Departments. I was actually off on maternity leave for about half the CEDI program, but I was kept in the loop while I was away. So I was here for the latter half, but still have a lot of information that I can share. So I'm excited to be here.
Thanks, Kaylee.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Walsham Tenshak. I'm joining you from the traditional territory of the Haisla Nation. I work with the District of Kitimat as the Director of Economic Development. And like Katie, I didn't join the partnership from the very beginning of it, but I've been fortunate to catch up well enough that I could share a lot about what the progress has been and what our experience has been as a municipality. And I'm very excited I get to do this with Katie.
Thank you both. So I just want to let everyone know I've got sort of a few kind of prompting discussion questions for Kaylee and Walsham today, and following that there'll be space for questions, perhaps directly to Kaylee and Walsham if there's time. Otherwise, the CEDI team will be here to answer any questions. You're free to post those questions in the chat. Otherwise, we'll take those questions and ask you to put your hands up during a Q&A period a little bit later. So with that, I know, Kaylee, as you mentioned, you did start with us a little bit later in the process, but I know that you were also very much aware of the nature of the relationship between Haisla Nation Council and the District of Kitimat prior to joining the program. Your communities joined in January 2021. And I'd love if you could sort of, tell us a little bit about the state of the relationship between your communities prior to joining the program.
Sure. Interesting question to start off with, and I feel like it almost makes it seem very negative, but I don't want it to come across that way. But the relationship before we started the CEDI program was almost non-existent in terms of the working relationship. We didn't do a lot together. It was a lot of siloed work, siloed projects. We didn't have government to government relations. Even staff rarely communicated. It was more on matters that needed to be consulted with the other community. So it was very minimal. There was one small initiative that both Haisla and Kitimat have. It goes back, I think, 17 or so years now. So it was one of the only things. And it was just a joint basketball tournament once a year that we would co-host. And we still do that today, but that was like our one and only activity that we really did together. We didn't have a whole lot happening before. And then I'll do like a very brief history on, so the Haisla, of course, have been here since time immemorial. And the district of Kitimat was actually created when, at the time, Alcan came into town in the 1950s. And really it was Alcan that ran the town, and hence why the incorporation of the district of Kitimat happened was because Alcan came into the territory uninvited. So it wasn't a very great beginning to start with. We've made a lot of progress, but that's kind of a little bit of the history on our relationship, I would say.
Thanks very much, Kaylee. And I will say, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but, I really will say that the Haisla Nation Council elected officials and District of Kitimat Council have been incredibly engaged through this process, along with what you're seeing here is some really dedicated staff. And I think that's made all the difference in the building of the relationship. So Walsham, with that, now, we're in March 2024, and there's just a couple months left of your community's participation in the CEDI program. Can you tell us about the ways that the partnership has grown over the course of the past 2 years?
One of the things that we would say is a very significant improvement for us is how we communicate with each other, both on the staff to staff level, but also on the elected official level. So we've seen improvements in how our chief and mayor communicate and how they are able to go to events together. Last year during Canada Day, which is like one of the biggest yearly events in the district, we had both the chief and the mayor share, now I'm forgetting the word for this. It's not a canopy. It's a float, yes, share a float. So they both shared a float and they both were in the parade together. And it was a beautiful way to see that relationship in person and not just like, through emails or through attending meetings together. The other thing that we've seen through this partnership is because of the monthly working group meetings, senior staff on both ends meet frequently so that we're both very up to date on what's going on in each community. We're both able to troubleshoot things quicker before they become like bigger issues of why weren't we consulted, or like why are we just hearing about this now, or how has this been happening and no one's known about it. So it's also giving us the opportunity to learn about both how the Haisla work, but also like things that are important to them when we're considering projects or programs moving forward. So it's giving us that extra lens within which we can view the work that we do and look at how it also impacts the Haisla as the host community. I'd say the owners of the land that we're dwelling and working and living and playing on. The other thing that we've seen improve through the partnership is the number of projects that we've collaborated on. So Kaylee kind of hinted at it when she said that we only worked on that one basketball tournament every year. But we've seen that dramatically increase through the course of the partnership. We're collaborating on multiple events in a year, and we had a subcommittee for collaborative events. So that helped lead that kind of work. But it also helped us look at gaps within the programming that are offered within the district, so that very recently we started offering like Haisla language and culture teaching as one of the programming within the recreation center. One of the things that is the biggest project we've collaborated on is the Haisla Bridge project. So the Kidmat River connects the industrial lands to the rest of the residential and downtown area of the municipality. But the bridge that connected both lands was falling apart and needed to be retrofitted or changed. We got some funding, we were able to build a new bridge, but in that process and through this partnership, we were able to incorporate Haisla art on that bridge, which was a very significant visible improvement from what the old bridge was and what the visibility of the Haisla Nation used to be within the district. I could go on and on, but I think like that gives you some context to how we've seen the partnership evolve and improve as the years have gone by. The last 2 years have gone by.
Thank you, Walsham. I mean, you speak briefly to, and I'll speak a little bit more about this later in the presentation, but you speak about the working group, and as we've talked about, you know, you are both dedicated staff working group members, and you have I believe 3 elected officials appointed from each of your respective governments to sit on that monthly meeting. And I think in many ways, I've witnessed your partnership really lean into those working groups and use them as an opportunity to really update one another on what's going on in your communities. And that is in a large part why you've been able to, I think, collaborate on such a vast number of projects that really differ. And, you know, I think your partnership has really taken this idea of community economic development and really ran with it to see it from a more holistic perspective. And how do you create a really healthy environment for all community members to live in Haisla territory? Just a reminder for folks, if you can mute yourself. Thank you. I want to ask a little bit about that. So that's, you know, the working group is one of the sort of CEDI program wise practices that we ask every participating partnership to have. You've also created subcommittees to work on a variety of areas of interest. You've recently just created a joint strategic plan for your governments for the next 5 years, which of course is still in a draft and will need to go to councils, but it's allowed us to be able to plan for what comes next for your partnership post CEDI. I'm just wondering if either of you would like to speak to any of those kind of carry forward pieces that, you know, that we've been talking about that you'll take outside of the CEDI program that have been, you found really useful or a good use of your collaborative time together.
Sure, I can start with this one. The working group was really helpful because the working group was the staff and the elected officials. So from my perspective, the way our governance works is we try and make sure our governance and our administration are very separate in terms of what they do. But it was nice to have it with the District of Kitimat where you have both there so that you would get the sense of what the elected officials wanted rather than your administration going away, doing this, all of this great work. And then if you bring it back to your elected officials and they're like, no, we don't like that at all. It's the wrong direction. Is you're in those meetings together and they can give you that feedback right there where the staff can then go away and complete all of that collaborative work, the strategic directions being given, all of that fun stuff. So the working groups I thought were very helpful in that sense. I like the structure too. So I feel like if we didn't have guidelines on when to meet or what should we talk about in these meetings, setting a strategic plan together, all of those things, I don't think that the meetings would have been as productive and we wouldn't have had as much outcome. So I think the CEDI partnership was just super beneficial for us because it provided that structure needed to show how are we going to work together post CEDI. And I think we're getting to a point where we have a pretty good understanding of what that will look like. There's a couple of tweaks we need to make because CEDI is very much economic development initiated, of course, because that's what the program is. But now we're finding all of these social aspects that we could both work together to address. So there will be some tweaks in our friendship moving forward for sure, but it helped us develop that foundation and make some good progress on collaborative projects and events.
I could just add to that, that one of the things that we're very excited to see like coming out of this is that we were able to hire an Indigenous Relations Manager. So the District of Kidmat hired an Indigenous Relations Manager. I believe Haisla Nation is very generous and has forgiven us for stealing one of their staff in the process. but it's been a wonderful addition to our team. She's been here about 2 weeks now, but we've already had like very valuable feedback from her on things that we could evaluate within the district, ways that we could look at partnering more with Haisla. What we are foreseeing this doing is helping us sustain the partnership work that we've been doing once our CEDI partnership officially ends, so that we have like a bit more support to keep doing the work that we've outlined through this joint strategic plan. So we're very excited for that piece.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that, Walsham. There's a million questions I could ask you, and we could go on and on, but I think what I would ask at this point is, just from your own experience, you know, what advice or words of wisdom would you have to offer communities who are at this point just thinking about applying to the CEDI program? So maybe I could ask you both, and then if there's a couple of minutes, we'll take any questions. So folks, if you have any questions for Kaylee or Walsham, please feel free to put them in the chat or throw up your hand and we'll get to you. So maybe I'll ask Walsham and Kaylee if you have any advice or words of wisdom.
I think my first thing is just making sure that both sides of the elected officials are on board. Otherwise, the program will not be successful. I couldn't imagine if we didn't have the support from the Haisla Nation Council and the District of Kitimat Council. The staff can only do so much of the work. You need that leadership support. So definitely make sure all hands are on deck, because it can get at times throughout the CEDI program. I think the monthly meetings were a lot for some of the council members with some of the feedback. It was good on the staff level, I found, for the frequency of meetings, because we have so much going on. But from the elected, if you don't have that support, the program likely will be more of a struggle. So I would definitely encourage you to make sure that there's that commitment for the 2 years, because it can become quite taxing. Might sound good at first, but once you get through the 2 years, it's like, oh man. So I think that's my biggest advice to anyone looking to start the CEDI program.
On my end, I'd say I totally agree with Kaylee, by the way. I think things could have gone all right if we didn't have support from council. But I'd say the other thing that we found very important is, if we had not stepped into this with like an openness and a willingness to learn and to collaborate, it wouldn't have worked out. I think there's a perspective that each side of the table brings to how things could work. And we had to step into it, being willing to admit that we might be wrong. We might get things off sometimes. We have so much we don't know, but we need to learn. And I think coming into the partnership or this kind of work with that attitude helps a lot in how the partnership can be formed as things evolve, because there will be a lot of learnings. And if you don't come to it with that positive mindset, it just might fall off.
Great advice from both of you. Thank you very much. I'll just ask if there are any questions to Walsham or Kaylee at this point. Okay, well, oh yeah, here we have one. Have you experienced a change of leadership from either chief and council or mayor and council, and how did that change things? Great question, Wayne. Kaylee or Walsham, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, we had our, well, so the way we do our elections is we do 5 council members every 2 years just to provide some continuity. So the way our governance is set up helps us in that way. So you don't have 10 brand new council members coming in at one time. It's staggered for that purpose. But we did actually go through an election last year. So we did experience a couple of members of the working group change, but we still had some of the previous ones. So there was a bit of continuity at the elected official level. It might have been slightly tricky if all members ended up changing. It might have been a little bit harder, but our governance is set up purposefully that way. But I would imagine if it was otherwise and it was a brand new, it would have been a little trickier to catch them up to speed on what the partnership is, the work we're doing, and the direction.
Just like the HISLA, we also had elections, but we had our elections in 2022. And so when the partnership began in 2021, we had just had 1 workshop out of 4 before the elections. And elections happened in October. The next workshop was in November. So it was perfect timing somewhat to get those new council members onto the program. And we were fortunate that we also only had like half our council turnover. So the other half stayed the same and our mayor was unchanged. And then we had the other half of council that was new. So there was some continuity as well for us.
Yeah, thanks to you both. And it's really quite common, I would say, in almost every single partnership, we will see both, or if it's a multi-partner partnership, every government will have an election or one will be around the corner. And so there are ways that we manage that also internally as CEDI staff. So, we're always offering to be able to go back to, so when you start the program, we'll come to your communities for the first time and we'll do a sort of one-on-one with chief and council and a one-on-one with mayor and council. And we will offer that on a continued basis as elections happen, as there is turnover and change. The CEDI program itself is really iterative, and that's not to say that, we will want to shift and change with elections and turnover and change, but we also know that that is inevitable and it will happen. And it's about bringing folks into the process, and it's about ensuring that along the way there's strong documentation and reason to show this is bringing benefit to both communities. So Wayne, we do have ways to manage that, and it's certainly not unique in the program. I know everybody holds their breath when that election is coming up, but so far, I think we've had I would say, mostly really positive experience of coming out the other side, and still maintaining in a forward moving direction. So Kaylee and Walsham, I thank you so much for your time. I know you both have very busy schedules, and we've already had I think 3 meetings together this week on different things. So I'll see you, I don't know, next week or the week after, but thank you again. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks
you
for having us. Enjoy the rest of your day, everyone.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Great. Okay, well, we'll hop in now I want to give a bit of an overview of how the CEDI program and the Stronger Together approach works. I won't spend too much time on this 4-stage approach in any great detail. There's definitely a lot of information about the 4-stage approach on our website. But what I will say is that, as much as it's laid out as a linear process, it is certainly not. At the very heart of what we're doing, we're building relationship. And so I would invite you to think about this as more of a circular or cyclical process. It's not to say we move through connection and that's it. We don't come back to it. In fact, I would say we would come back to it most often. But really the process we use over the course of the 3 years is really spending some time connecting. So connecting ourselves, the CEDI team, with your chief and council, mayor and council, and senior staff, inviting opportunities for connection and collaborative learning and sharing in that preliminary stage. There's not a rush to get to what is that economic development initiative that we're going to partner on. We know that you could do transactional relationships on your own, but we're here to help you slow down that process, take the lead of the communities, slow it down, engage in cultural sharing and with direction from the nations. and move forward from there with a stronger foundation into doing some collaborative visioning. You know, where do our economic development priorities overlap? Where are our jurisdictions different or similar? Where can we see benefit to both of our communities and the region at large? Getting to a place then deciding on a collaborative initiative. And I always say, you can't go wrong here. I know a lot of communities put a lot of pressure to decide on that one correct or the best option. But it's only ever meant to be the first initiative that you start with. If this partnership is for the long term, you know, we really just encourage you to pick something that where the CEDI team can really support and you start to better understand how you work together. And then we support you through action and implementation. So that might mean that we're supporting with collaborative planning, whether that's strategic planning or work planning. We would support if there needs to be consultants engaged to be able to do, you know, feasibility work or anything along those lines. And ultimately just helping that partnership kind of and their goals come to fruition. And I'm being somewhat vague because every single partnership is going to look differently. And it needs to be an iterative process to be able to best match where your communities are at and what you need from the program. So one of the things that we offer as a CEDI program is the ongoing facilitation and process support. And I think that's something that Kaylee and Walsham just spoke to. You know, it's really that third party support that we can bring is one of the assets of the CEDI program. So we're there to support in facilitating those monthly working group meetings, to set agenda, to facilitate the meeting, and to send meeting summaries. And the reason we hold that administrative burden is really so that you folks can come to the table and meet as equals, to just be able, we set the table and you folks come to have discussion. We, of course, will support and design and facilitate shared learning opportunities and relationship building activities. As I've mentioned, collaborative planning practices such as joint strategic and work plans, and integrate different wise practices that we've picked up and learned from other partnerships along the way. So one of those, of course, would be working group terms of reference, different collaborative communication tools, all the way again to friendship agreements, relationship agreements, and different kinds of long-term plans. All of the workshops that we'll facilitate for your communities are really customized. We will facilitate 4 or 5 workshops over the course of the 3 years that you're participating in the program. The expectation is this is where you bring together the larger group. So you have your working group that is, you know, a few elected officials and a few senior staff from each community. But the expectation is that these workshops, this is where you would invite your full councils, you would invite a broader group of staff. And we'll engage in, like I say, you know, everything from relationship building to shared learning activities to joint visioning and planning. And so while we, of course, bring the facilitation and process design, that's very much done in collaboration with the working group. We want your feedback all along the way. You are there to represent your communities and help to give guidance to the programming. Lastly, we come with a small and modest grant. It's a $45,000 capacity development grant that each of your partnerships will be able to access jointly. The intention here is that it's really kind of some seed money to be able to leverage. I mean, it certainly is enough to kind of get going on a preliminary study of sorts if that's what's needed. But it also can be leveraged. And I think this is a great time to speak about one of those benefits of First Nation municipal collaboration, in that your respective governments can often access different pots of funding. And so, you know, increasingly, we're also seeing that First Nation municipal collaboration is a very appealing area for folks to fund. And so, again, this is really just meant to be some dollars to start the work, and so that there isn't a financial burden on your communities. So I just want to reiterate our call for applications at this very time. We're calling for applications from Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba-based partnerships. We are accepting applications from First Nations and local governments or municipalities. The reason at this time that we are focused on First Nations specifically is that is how our funding and programming is structured. We will be doing an intake of 5 First Nation municipal partnerships. Now, the partnership you just heard from was 1 First Nation, 1 municipality, but we certainly welcome multi-partner partnerships. So if that's 2 First Nations and 1 municipality, we have experience with a wide variety of sort of different makeups of partnerships. And you certainly wouldn't be sort of penalized for applying with a larger group. But it is important, of course, to have really that commitment from each of those who are jointly applying. The program participation is through kind of April, May of this year, 2024, through January 2027. I mentioned already the capacity development grant, and I just want to remind you to really review the application information sheet that's available on our website and will be linked in this presentation as well. It has almost every piece of information you could want about the CEDI program, our suggested program participation timeline, and everything to do with the application request and timeline. So again, kind of the next steps that we would recommend, if you haven't already done so, to download and review that application information sheet, to download and review the application questions, so they're available in a PDF format. If you require, so you'll find that the application questions that are available online are set up for 1 First Nation and 1 municipality. If your partnership looks differently than that, please contact us and we will give you a more personalized application form that's right for your combination. We would suggest that you would work with your partner applicant to jointly prepare your responses. There is, in the application form, there's a section that is joint, a section for the First Nation, and a section for the municipality. Once you're ready to move forward with completing the online application, we would ask that 1 individual do so. It's just the formatting of how our application form and system works. That's what we found the best. And a reminder that the application deadline is March 27th, just before midnight, end of day. You can find then the application link to the online form when you're ready, also on that same page on the CEDI website. If you're looking for any other information on the CEDI program, any of the tools and supports that we have, I would point you towards our CEDI website. It has lots of information. You can access our Stronger Together toolkit, different community profiles, and different wise practice tools and resources. And of course, I welcome anyone to reach out to me, and myself and the team will work internally to get back to you as quickly as possible, as we know that the timeline is tight for the application intake. So that's all I have at this point. I would love to just open the floor for questions. Again, feel free to put those in the chat or raise your hand, and you can unmute yourself and ask the question. So I'm seeing a comment there from Warren, so thank you for that in the chat. But please, the floor is yours.
I was just wondering, is there maybe like an initial presentation or just one document that would sum up all the benefits of this that we could send out to our neighboring communities that might want to engage on it, that we could just like a one-stop shop, this is what it is about, this is all the positives that can happen, are you willing to work with us on it? Do you guys have like a template or anything like that?
We have the application information sheet, which has some of that. I certainly, though, if you feel that like a condensed version of that, because I know that the size of that might be a little bit off-putting to someone, I think we certainly could make you a one-pager and circulate that and have that uploaded on the website. That's good feedback, and if that would be helpful, we could do that for you. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Warren. Other questions?
have a question. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, thanks, Jen.
So it seems like obviously there's benefit for municipalities and First Nations to work together on an application. If you had, say, 5 First Nations and municipalities who are currently working on developing a group, would they still only be eligible for $45,000? Or because there's so many, would they be able to be eligible for more funding?
It's a good question. At this time, and it's not to say we couldn't have a further conversation, but at this time, the way that we've received funding for these 5 partnerships, it is a dedicated $45,000 for each partnership.
Okay, thanks.
Oh. So one of the things that we were kind of talking about here, and I'm with the City of Grand Prairie, is we're not actually bordering on a First Nations community. They're all within about an hour distance drive. So is that a barrier, or is that still okay? Like, what are your thoughts there?
As long as each of the partners finds value in the partnership, we have had other partnerships. We have current partnerships who are separated by lakes and distance by road, but are finding that regionally speaking, it makes a lot of sense to be in partnership and to be building on that collaboration. So it's certainly not a problem.
And then my follow-up to that was each 3 nation that's within our 1 hour radius, each is a part of a different MD. So we would have like 1 nation and then 1 MD. We have 3 of them, so that's 6 nations and MDs already. And then the city, so I don't know, have you ever seen a joint application of 7 entities wanting to get involved? And what do you think about that? Is it a barrier, or? Yeah.
It's a good question. We have had a 6-partner partnership before in Southern Ontario. So we do have some experience with that, and there was a real variety in, as you're mentioning, sort of types of government that existed. I think what I would say is that as participating communities, if you're that large, I think it's really important to set your expectations in a realistic manner. You're not going to be as nimble. There are going to be that many more people we need to engage, that many more processes we need to understand. So I think that's the only thing to really consider. It's not prohibitive for us as a program, but I do think it's really important to sort of set those goals and objectives in a really realistic manner, which of course we would support you to do if you were a chosen partnership.
Thank you.
Hi, does the
Hi, Dimitri.
project have to be a partnership? I'm trying to envision how a project would roll out. So like, I understand the community or the communities working together collectively to accomplish a project, or is the CEDI application the project? Like just getting involved with these municipalities, is that the project, or is it? In order to be accepted as an applicant, you have to have a project that you have to partner with these municipalities and work collectively together towards that common goal? Or is it like, is the purpose of this program just to facilitate that relationship? And then throughout the 2 years, you would like be a series of meetings, or like, I'm just trying to better understand this program.
Sure. No problem, Dimitri. Good question. I think what I would say is, no, we certainly don't expect for you to come to the CEDI program with an idea of what you would collaborate on. That's really what the CEDI program will support your communities to do. So, we know that the more kind of transactional relationships between First Nations and municipalities can exist without the CEDI program. But the CEDI program is really what we've been told has been the most sort of beneficial or influential, because we're supporting the 2 or multiple governments to get to know one another, to get to know how each government works, to get to know what are each other's economic development priorities and needs. And then, so we help to facilitate those meetings. We help to support relationship building activities, all the way along of helping to identify what could be areas of collaboration. And then we have tools to support you to sort of come to a place where you've jointly decided on, yeah, this feels like a good place to start. Let's work on this set initiative. And then we'll support your communities to start that process, to do the collaborative planning, to get that initiative off the ground. So certainly, yeah, our expectation is not that you come to us and say, you know, we want to work on X, Y, or Z. That's what the process is for. Have I answered your question?
Yes, I believe you had. I just kind of like wanted to understand it because it's to me, just at a glance and just from what I'm hearing, it sounds like it's like a relationship building initiative. And with that, I mean, it sounds great because, like, for example, the relationship between our nation and Cool Lake First Nations and the municipalities, like there isn't a really strong relationship. And I think like the discussion for our communities, we want to have that relationship. And my immediate thoughts like, okay, so is this to build this relationship? Do we need to have a project in mind to work towards that common goal? Or is it just facilitating that relationship and then building that relationship over the course of the 2 years? And then hopefully that would lead to something awesome, because like I know for a fact another organization, FCM, has like a lot of green municipality grants available. So in my just with my wheels turning and stuff, I just thinking like we have this service agreement with the city of Cold Lake to pretty much essentially what we're doing is working on retrofitting our existing wastewater and sewage systems to essentially partner with the city and then put our wastewater and stuff into their new wastewater treatment plant. And I'm just trying to think like how can this all work? Or like maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. Maybe I just want to know where I can utilize this program to essentially facilitate those relationships to work towards those other projects down the road. That's what I'm trying to.
No, you've got it. Like you've totally got it. It's I'll maybe say something, then Jordan, maybe you could speak on this because your community's participation I think was similar. So and what I'll say is, Dimitri, yeah, at the base of it, it is a relationship building exercise. And the benefit, again, over and over we hear is that we're coming in as a third party with a neutral process that's really driven by the communities. It's grounded in what the communities need and where they're at. And so through the process, we will start to hear, beginning all the way with a one-on-one with chief and council and a one-on-one with mayor and council, we'll start to hear, yeah, these are areas of interest to us, or we would like to actually partner with the nation, or we'd like to partner with the municipality on this or this or this. And the idea is that we kind of start with a bit of a blue sky vision, like what could we achieve? And then we kind of help to come down to what is realistic with our current capacity and funding and competing priorities and all these other things. And with that, we'll support your communities to start to explore that initiative. And I think what I find most of our partnerships find is there's a lot of spin-off benefits. You might progress on one project, but much like Kaylee and Walsham were saying, they're seeing all these sort of ripple effects of benefit because the relationship has been strengthened. And staff and councils better understand how each government works. There's less assumptions, right? There's more knowledge. And if an opportunity is coming to town, there's the relationship to pick up the phone instead of speaking on behalf of or bypassing, a really important relationship. But Jordan, maybe you could speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. So what I didn't mention at the start of the meeting was that I used to be a participant. I participated with my First Nation in a municipality up here in Northern Alberta back in 2018 to 2021. And that was the exact same thing we did was we worked on, well, one of the many was the water agreement and wastewater agreements that we did. So jointly we were able to and this is a project that had been around, talked about for 20 to 15 years. My brother-in-law is on council and he remembers putting it on the table initially, 20 years ago. And it wasn't something that we were able to kind of wrap our head around or get that relationship right until we kind of got together in the room with the CEDI program. Like my council and the town's council, everybody grew up here, but we knew each other, but we never got into the same room. So there was a lot of missed opportunities kind of on these, grant fundings or the different dollars that we could have done if we jointly worked together. And then we were able to get that water agreement in place, build our own water station out here, and then as well as like the sewer agreement. So like at this point in time, we're still building the sewer, the wastewater site, but the idea is that the town's going to provide us with the water, and we're going to provide them with the wastewater treatment. So it's kind of like a give and take relationship. And and that's the biggest thing, is that we had those transactional relationships like Marissa talked about, but it wasn't until this process that we actually got everybody in a room, and we all had our own ideas of like how we could work together, but it wasn't until we really learned about each other, in fact found out there was a lot of overlap in the services that we provide as a nation and as a municipality. And then we found like ways that we could kind of play off each other and support one another, so that we could see the cost savings, and then we can reallocate funding to those gaps in services that, I can only speak for my nation, but our nation has in a lot of areas. And so we're able to kind of save that money and reapply to places to provide for our members. And so, yeah, I think like you said it right. You're bang on with it. Whereas you can come with ideas, but like at the end of the day, it's going to build that relationship, that rapport, and something that's going to be long standing for generations to come, hopefully. And it's where it survives the councils and the changeovers and really like connecting the staff to one another, because I don't know how it is at your nation, but with my nation, my staff are there for 20 or 30 years, like they don't leave. And so like that's where the continuity really comes in, is that those staffing are important, and the leadership is there for the decision and direction. So yeah, it was huge for us. And I was just telling Marissa before this meeting that I'm actually going to go meet with the town officials there to kind of help support that relationship in a different way again, because it's something that's still near and dear to my heart. Obviously, I'm here with CEDI now, but I'm no longer with the nation, but I'm still going to go make sure that relationship kind of continues onward. So.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Jordan. And just a follow-up question. Is Cando or CEDI involved in the project throughout the duration? So like, for example, is it like say, for example, Cold Lake First Nations, City of Cold Lake, and Cando and CEDI, or is it like just like you're kind of like the bridge, or how does that work?
Great questions. And I kind of flew past what I had hoped would be the opening, so I'm sorry. I missed a very important piece. So Cando, we are co-implement the CEDI program with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, FCM, which you've just mentioned. So they're great colleagues because we're both coming from different perspectives. So Cando, of course, supporting and building capacity in economic development in First Nations and Indigenous communities across Canada, and FCM really, being an advocate to support municipalities across Canada. So we're a mixture of staff from Cando and FCM, and then we all are dedicated to the CEDI program. So you would have 2 CEDI staff dedicated to your partnership for the duration of your participation in the program. That being said, we are really engaged with Cando and FCM leadership. We're supported by communications teams and finance teams at both organizations. So very much we're engaged with both Cando and FCM. So for instance, if there is a opportunity there for a collaborative granting opportunity, or there's an opportunity to come and participate at one of our conferences, we're very much tied into and we'll engage our partners in a really active way in both Cando and FCM opportunities. It's a bit of a tricky structure, but it's, I think, the best of both worlds, if that answers your question.
It does, thank you. I'm just kind of curious, because like if we're going to build this relationship, I'm just kind of wondering, like, are we just reporting back to the organization that is facilitating the program, or is it like, are they actually actively involved in this? Because in my view, like, it would be awesome if they were involved, just to, just kind of like a neutral mediator. I don't know if that's even the right word, but something like that.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. So basically, myself, Carmel, and Penny, for instance, are all on the call, and we're all delivery staff. So we're all delivery staff. So for instance, myself and Carmel, we work on a couple of partnerships together. We're fully dedicated to those partnerships. So we're there from everywhere, from, you know, rolling out the program, meeting with chief and council, meeting with mayor and council, setting up the working groups, supporting subcommittees, supporting the long-term planning, facilitating the workshops. Like, we're there being that third party support or mediator, like you say. And then, you know, it's really then just the job of the elected officials and staff to show up from your communities and participate, which we know alleviates some of that stress, because it's not one community coming to the table say this is the right way or this is the only way. We're there to help to build a shared and collaborative process that works for both your communities. And you don't even have to report to us. We have to do the reporting. So it's a win-win all around.
So the applicant doesn't actually have to do the reporting? Is that what I heard?
No.
Oh, well, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, we're a federally funded program where you don't have to do any reporting to us. Great question, Carson. I see in the chat there. How much does it cost to participate in the CEDI program? Nothing. We, if selected to the program, we have funding to be able to come to your communities, to be able to deliver these workshops. So like I said, we will likely make 4 or 5 trips to your communities over the course of the 3 years. Those trips are fully, we have the funding to support us coming to your communities, to us hosting the workshop. So there's budget available for venue and catering and protocol and any pieces that we might need to facilitate those workshops in your community. And then of course, we also come with that $45,000 grant. So we do, though, note that, you know, staff and council time comes at an in-kind expense. And so, of course, you know, because we're coming at a no cost, we really do ask each community to take that seriously, and to take participation in the program very seriously. So I think it was Kaylee who mentioned how important it is to have really buy-in from the elected councils. And I will say, while we don't ask for a council resolution as part of the joint application, we will ask for a council resolution from both the nation and the municipality following workshop 1. So we give space for your communities to get to know, what is this CEDI process? What is this CEDI program? We will have come to your communities. We will have met again with chief and council, mayor and council. We will have hosted a collaborative joint workshop. And then following that workshop, we'll ask your communities to commit to participating in the program. So that outlines, what does it mean to have a working group? What kind of hours are we expecting? Who are the working group representatives? And do the councils agree to participate for this, the remainder of the duration of those 3 years? That was a long-winded way of answering. It's free. My pleasure. We've got just a couple minutes. Is there any last questions or comments? Otherwise, you are absolutely welcome to follow up with us via email, and we'll be available, like I say, as quickly as possible to answer any questions. Yes, there will be the Zoom, as soon as we get it back from Zoom recording. I know our comms team is very busy, and actually I think one person is in the air right now, but as soon as we can get it up and loaded onto the CEDI website, it will be on that same page where you'll find the application information sheet and forms. Yeah, absolutely, Rita. Feel free to reach out, and I'll put my email one more time in the chat. Okay, well, if there's no further questions, well, thank you all for your time, and we really look forward to your applications. And I did have a question a couple days ago to ask if we would have the capacity to review draft applications. We don't. We're a very small team already managing 8 current partnerships across the country and managing the rollout of this work. But we're certainly happy to answer questions, so don't hesitate to be in touch about those.
Maybe one more thing is maybe just discuss like how competitive is the process typically? Like how many applicants do we typically get on a call out?
Is that a question?
Yeah, like you would have the answers. Like so it's for everybody who doesn't know. I am only 3.5 weeks into my new position with CEDI. So I mean that is something that I would be interested in knowing as an applicant. And so I was maybe hoping that you could shed some light on that as well.
Yeah, the numbers have sort of changed over the years only because it's only back in phase 3 so the most recent intake that we did was in the fall of 2021. And that was the first time we started asking for joint applications. And so that changes the numbers a little bit. It skews the numbers about how many communities are applying. But I believe off the top of my head, it was about 40 joint applications, but many of those were at minimum 3 communities. So, because we're only calling for applications in 3 provinces, and we honestly haven't had very many applications ever from Saskatchewan, I am hoping that we're going to see an increased uptake. But it's hard for me to project that at this point. But like I say, so last time we had 35 joint applications, probably closer to 50 plus First Nations and municipalities in those joint applications of each, I would say. And then we were only able to accept 8 partnerships. So if that gives a little bit of an idea. Okay. Well, be in touch, and thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your time today.
Oh, sorry.